In this video, we're going to have a look at some SAT prep problems for the year 2021. Several SAT math problems. Their full solutions are shown for you today on High Peak Education. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a wonderful day. So this continues from our series of videos where we're showing you lots of ways to solve SAT prep problems. These are previously given SAT math exams as given by the College Board, and we're working through practice SAT problems to get you ready to take your SAT exam. So let us know in the comments how you're going to use these, or let us know what other kinds of videos you want to see or what other kind of problems you want us to solve. But let's go ahead and get into today's content right away. 3 times c plus d equals 5. What's the value of c plus d?
Okay, the first thing I did, I don't know why I thought this was going to require more work, but you would just divide both sides by 3 so you can isolate c plus d.
I agree.
Because c plus d equals 5 over 3.
5 over 3. I agree. And what answer should that be?
B.
Yeah, I agree.
I did.
Yeah.
You want it out of 100. Same thing you do to the bottom to the top, so you multiply 9 by 10, you get 90. And then I was going to do the same thing for the object on Jupiter, and I was going to multiply both like the top and the bottom by 10, and then since it's like out of 10, like no matter how bad, not how bad, but like how simplified you get it, it would be the same. But moving forward, that would be like if you're subtracting. But
yeah,
I just got to the other one, and you have 90 over 100, and you have 230 over 100, and so then it was asking how many more pounds does it weigh on Jupiter than it weighs on Venus. If it's on Earth, then... Or wait, no. Never mind, I read that first part wrong. It's asking if an object weighs 100 pounds on Earth.
100 pounds on Earth.
Yeah, but it's like not out of 100, just if it weighed.
So here's the deal. The object's weight on Venus should probably be 90 pounds, right? Because it's 100 pounds times 9/10.
Okay, so then I was right. And then, yeah, so now you have 90, and then you have 230. And so then you would just, I'm pretty sure you would just subtract it.
That's right.
You would get 140.
That's right.
Okay. And so you could do n equals 4, and then n equals 1. N plus n equals, n plus n equals 11. And then you'd also do n plus n equals 20, because you want to find how many, like how much, like just one specific, so it'd be novels. And so... you could do, or it would be 4n plus 2n equal.
I would say just 1m.
1n. Oh yeah, oops, not 2. Sorry, I thought it said $2.
No problem.
And for what am I looking for? It's asking for novels, so you're gonna want to isolate n all by itself on the other side, or you can kind of just plug in numbers.
Yeah. Now I would actually just a quick thought. If I'd like to interject here briefly. This first equation here you might call the amount equation. This second equation you might call the revenue or the sales, or it's the second one in dollars. Now that being said, if we want just the novels, I would suggest you isolate for m, only because we don't care what m is. If we isolate for m, substitute into the other one, we get n. So m is 11 minus n, and that can go in here. That's 4n plus 11 minus n equals 20. Now, if we subtract 11 from both sides, we get 9. 4n minus n, 3n, so then n equals 3. 3 novels, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But then that means we sold 8 magazines. 3 novels and 8 magazines add up to 11. This is by far, out of all the SAT practice exams that I've done with a lot of people, the most common way a system of equations is set up. One equation in terms of the amount, another equation in terms of the revenue. So one equation in terms of just the coefficients on n and m are 1, and the second one, the coefficients on the n and m are dollars amount per each, and then the total, sales, let's say, is on the right-hand side over here.
For that one, because it's basically asking you like equation setup, so you have to like read. It's telling you to find out what equation it's talking about. And so to increase its membership by a total of n businesses per year. I don't even think it could be C, because when you have an exponential Or no, it wouldn't be d, because when you have an exponential function, like the number that's outside of the parentheses would be it's ab to the x. Actually, no, wait, I take it back. It wouldn't be c because the b is like the initial value, and so it wouldn't be in the inside of the parentheses because the inside number is like the multiplier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be, and it can't be b because it wants to increase, and that's a decreasing linear function. What I'm trying to figure out is if it would be exponential or linear. It only says businesses per year, but it doesn't say by a constant amount. So there's no other clue that would tell you it's linear unless it's like constant. But per also means like, when you use per, that's like for multiplication. It could also mean like each year, which is kind of the same as constant, but I don't know what the per is supposed to mean in this context.
So per is per each year. So it's like adding that many businesses per each year. So we're right. So it'd be constant. It is 85% of what you said was exactly correct, and I can tell you got a lot of really good ideas in your head, but let me just help you with a little bit of clarifying, okay? So, by the way, you're doing great because you're very involved, but I'm only here to just help you solidify the ideas, okay? Add that last 10 to 15% of expertise. So first of all, A and B are both linear functions, okay? Because they have constant rates of growth. The slope is n for both of them. And here's the important thing, which is a little different than what you said. Both A and B both have positive slopes. They both have a positive n. What's different about B is that the vertical axis intercept, usually we call this the y-intercept, is a negative number. And the idea is that there's no such thing as a negative number of businesses that we start with. So B is out. B is not the correct answer. Now, that being said, remember it was saying that we're adding n businesses per year? Okay? So the idea is that we add businesses per year. By the way, when you continually add the same number each time, that is a constant, but that's what multiplication is, right? If you always add, say, 10 businesses per year, then you always like plus 10, plus 10, plus 10, and then however many years you've gone, you multiply that number of years times 10. Because another way to say that is multiplication is repeated addition. Like that's what we know multiplication to be, right? 5 times 4 is just 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, right? It's repeated addition. All right, so those are a few thoughts. Now, getting back to what you were saying about exponential functions. What's on the outside of the exponential function is typically the initial value. What's on the inside of the exponential function, of the parentheses, is typically the multiplier. And the exponent is however many times we raise it to. Now, getting back to what you were saying, why do we know it's not exponential? First of all, it's a constant rate of growth. But secondly, if it was a exponential function, we would say, oh, it doubles every year, or it triples every year, or it goes up by a certain percentage every year. So if we say the total amount goes up by a certain multiplier each year, then we would know it's exponential. Because exponentiation is repeated multiplication. It's just one step higher in the hierarchy than addition is. So, because we know that, like, say, x squared is x times x. So exponentiation is just repeating multiplication. Does that make sense? So that just adds a little bit of clarity to what you were saying. So you got the right answer, but, I mean, hopefully I've given you some more to think about, okay? In the 1908 Olympic Games, the Olympic marathon was lengthened from 40 kilometers to approximately 42 kilometers. Of the following, which is the closest to the increase in distance of the Olympic marathon in miles? 1 mile is approximately 1.6 kilometers. Okay, so what do you think?
And at the end is like, of the following, which is the closest to the distance of the Olympic marathon in miles. It's asking for in miles. So at first what I was gonna do, I was just like, why can't I add 1.6 plus 1.6? And then, but I don't think it works that way. So actually when I did I'm like doing, because I have my notebook right here. So I'm like doing the conversion on the notebook.
Yeah, so here's what I would do, and this is something that I learned in chemistry. I've perfected it teaching physics many times.
always think about a unit conversion kind of like a common denominator, except that the units are different top and bottom because it's a conversion factor. So by the way, how many kilometers did the whole thing increase? Yeah, so we've got 2 kilometers, and then we should do times sign and a line, right? Because this is our conversion factor. And then we need to leave kilometers behind, and we need to go to miles. So how many kilometers are there in a mile? 1.6. So I think we should take 2 and divide by 1.6. Now remember, this is the calculator section, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 2 over 1.6. Yep. And by the way, on the SAT, you know, a lot of times they do ask you to round to, you know, some number. They say to the closest something or other. Yep, so 1.25. Okay? Let's see, which of the following orders pair satisfies the system of inequalities above? Okay, so I can think of 2 ways to solve this. Do you know what one of those is?
I already moved the x to the other side to isolate y because the top one has y all isolated.
Yeah.
And then after I did that, I was just gonna go in and plug in the I was gonna like just plug and check like the multiple choice answers, but I was only because I was gonna just plug in the y, but then now looking back, you kind of have to plug in the x to see if it would make sense. But I'm gonna plug and check.
Yeah. So one way to do this, and this is sort of the brute force way, is just plug in each of the choices. So that works. Okay. So you okay with doing that?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's try each of these. So this first one, if we plug it in, let's see, that's -1. Is that 3 times, let's see, -2 plus 1. So let's see, that's -6 plus 1. Is this less than that? I'd say no, right? And I just plugged into the top one. If we did -2 minus -1, that's -1. So again, that'd be a no. Okay, so then if we do B, you put in -1 for x, that's -3 plus 1. You put in 3 for y. Is that less than or equal to this? I'd say no. Okay, again, you could try the other one. It's not going to work. You put in 1 and 5. So it's 3 times 1 plus 1 and 5. I'd say that's also no, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, let's try D. 2 for x, that's 6 plus 1. And you put in -1. I think that's true. And then let's see if it satisfies the other one. Yeah, I run too fast. 2 plus 1. Is that greater than 1? So that's true. Okay. Now, by the way, a couple quick notes. First of all, if you do this, the brute force method, by far, after working with a lot of people, I've seen that the last choice tends to be the most common answer. Because they kind of expect you're going to plug them all in. So I might even suggest you start from the bottom up and make sure you don't make a mistake. The next thing I was going to briefly mention is the more sort of foolproof way is to solve each of these and then do a little sketch of a graph. Now, this one is already sort of solved. This one is not. So if you try to solve this one, you could subtract x from both sides, but here's the deal. When you divide by a negative, what happens to the direction of the inequality? Yeah, so you can do that. So that's going to be, let's see, -y greater than 1 minus x, which is saying y is less than, and then we could take the opposite of this, so that's x minus 1. Now, if you consider a graph here, just a sketch, okay, so the first one here, this one I'll do in red, this one I'll do in red. So that's going to be like a slope of 3 and a y-intercept of 1. So it's going to be like this, like so, okay, and no, sorry, it's a solid line because it's an equal to. But then the other one is meant to be a dashed line. So this one is going to be this one. So that's slope of 1, y-intercept of -1. So -1's right here, but the slope is 1. So it's going to be like this. Again, this is just a sketch, okay, getting us kind of in the ballpark. And yeah, dashed line here, that kind of thing. Now, we want We want y less than the red curve and also less than the blue curve. So it's got to be below here and below here. So it's got to be down here somewhere, right? So if you start looking at these points, I mean, A is right out because it's negative for x and negative for y. I mean, yeah. B is negative for x, positive for y. That's right out. Positive for x, positive for y. I mean, that's a little hard to tell. I mean, but 1 is right here, and then 5, and then 2, negative 1. So 2, negative 1, that's going to be right here. So that's correct. So D is the correct answer. So there's two ways to do it. You can do a sketch, or you can just plug. But again, I would recommend probably plug from the bottom up to save time.
Yeah, and it's not even anything where it has like, which of the following is closest if, and you have to like narrow down your search. It's not even like that. It's just asking for you to find orthopedic surgeon whose professional activity is research. And I'm pretty sure you just, I think you would just maybe, I don't know if you would do it out of the total, if you would just do it out of the orthopedic surgeon. But I think I would just look and do it out of the orthopedic surgeons first, because that's what it's asking for.
Yeah, because it says if one of the surgeons is selected at random. Yeah, so it'd be out of everybody. So 74 out of 607, right? Yep, so 74 out of 607.
I think it's just like, for me, when I answer these questions, I just try to see like which, like I think what they both said is that like if one of the options is like too, if it's too general, then that's probably not the question, because it's like, since it's a polling question, even though they do it like from a small sample to like apply to all of the population, if it starts with of all or something like that, then it's probably not the right answer. But
I suppose. I mean, I'm not familiar with that strategy, but I suppose. It says a polling agency recently surveyed 1,000 adults who were selected at random from a large city and asked each of the adults, are you satisfied with the quality of air in your city? Of those surveyed, 78% responded they were satisfied. Based on results of the survey, which of the following statements must be true? Of all the adults in the city, 78% are satisfied. Now, let's pause there for a second. Is that necessarily true? Well, right, because the thing is, 78% was in our survey. Our survey could have been erroneously large, or our survey could have been erroneously small. But in any case, we can't really know. So yes, it's too specific of a statement given we only sampled a sample. So not necessarily. All right. If another 1,000 adults were selected at random from the city surveyed, 78% would report they're satisfied with the air quality in the city. Is that necessarily true?
I think for me, I would probably choose this second one over the third one, because it's still like talking about like that same, or if it was still talking about that same city, but then the third one is saying that from a different, like if the adults selected at random were from a different city, I don't think you could apply, like I don't think you can come to that conclusion, because it's not the same city.
Right, it's not the same city. So it's not the same city. Yeah. Same city.
But it just says a different city. Like, that doesn't have anything to do.
Right.
Survey then.
So do you think number 2 is necessarily true?
I also don't know, like, because it's just like, you already did that. Or like, it's asking if you did another 1,000, but it would probably also be like 78% would report that they're satisfied with the quality.
So it's likely that it's going to be around 78%, but it's going to be exactly 78% necessarily? I would say no. And then furthermore, again, we could have gotten lucky in our survey. We could have gotten lucky and said a lot of people were saying yes in our survey, but like when we consider a different group of 1,000, less people say yes. So I would say not necessarily. So which choice is that? None. Okay. So it looks like we have a table with a bunch of trees and growth factors, and we've got 3 questions about that.
For this question, I would just take 12 and I would multiply it. It's asking for the American elm tree, so I just multiply by 4, and that is 48. So it would be D. Because the little paragraph right here says that in order to find the approximate age, you just take the diameter of the tree in inches, and it was in inches, and then you just multiply it by the growth factor for that.
So it'd be 12 times, which one? American elm? So 4. 48, right?
Single species, the growth factor of this species is closest to that of which of the following species of the tree.
Now, when you're on the SAT itself nowadays, are you able to write straight into the test booklet? Okay, so that's what I would do. I would try to draw as close of a line here as I could.
Whenever I have these questions, I kind of just round them down because I know the question is probably not going to be like that, but usually I just round it. I like try to stick to like, if it were closer to 80, I would have just said 80. But if not, then I probably just would have put it, unless I knew it was like straight in the middle. But I would just like round it. And I would just look for the question that's like closest to the answer that I get. Because
yeah. So I got 50 over 6, which ends up being for a slope. Whoops. 50 over 6 ends up being about 8.3. Repeating. And then we just need to find the associated tree. Shagbark hickory. Is that one of the choices? And by the way, given that my calculation was large, but it was slightly larger than anything on the table, I mean, real data might not fit the exact theoretical perfectly, but it has to be the shagbark hickory out of the choices there because it's the closest one that fits to that large number. If a white birch tree, a pin oak tree now each have a diameter of 1 foot, which of the following will be closest to the difference in inches in their diameters 10 years from now?
So I would just take the 1 foot and I put that back down to 12 inches, just because it's asking for inches. And all the diameters are inches, and then it's asking for the difference. So then you would just do 10 years from now. Which one? What the white birch tree? And that one's by 5. So that's the other one would be.
So what we have the pin oak tree and the white birch tree. So the white birch tree and the pin oak tree. And they're both equal to 12 for x. x1 and that's x2. We want to go 10 years from now. So the thing is, we need the growth factor for the white birch. So the growth factor for the white birch was 5.0. And then the growth factor for the pin oak tree is 3.0. Okay, so what that means is, let's see, that's 3 for each inch, it's how many years it takes. So this is 3 years per inch, and this is 5 years it ages per inch. Okay, so we're going to go 10 years, right? So that means this, I think, should go 2 inches. I got that by going years divided by years per inch. So this should be 10 divided by 3. So that should be, well, 10/3. So that's 3.3. And then what's the difference in the number of inches? Well, I think it's going to be about 1.3. Do you see how I got that? I don't think you necessarily needed the graph in this one. And the graph definitely helped me to get the
table.
Oh, the table.
Oh, well, I think also the triangle 8 would be probably.
That's right.
Yeah, this is the perpendicular. Since that one has 90 degrees, that means the other one also has.
Yep. So this is also going to be 90. This is going to be 60. This is going to be 30 right here.
30, 60. The little DC, that would be 6. Is it radical 3 or radical 2?
So it's just 6 because
the short leg is half, and then the other one
is with
isn't it?
6 times the square root of 3.
Yeah, radical 3. And then since that one's 6 radical 3, would the short leg be 12 radical 3, and then the hypotenuse be 12 radical 3?
I don't think so. I think the other triangle is congruent.
Oh, okay. So then 6 radical 3, 6, and then 12.
That's right. Now, by the way, one quick thing to mention. The 30, 60, 90 triangle is exactly half of the equilateral, right? So this is the so-called equilateral triangle, okay? And remember, the equilateral triangle is exactly 60, 60, 60, right? 60, 60. And all the sides are the same. So this would be 12, 12, 12. So what that means is if you take this equilateral triangle and you bisect the bottom base with an altitude, this is going to have to be 6, 6. Like that. Okay? So just keep that in mind when you have the 30, 60, 90. Okay? It's always going to be half of a equilateral. Good. Oh, right. It's okay. You're okay. You're okay. You're doing fine. You're doing great. Okay. Did you want to try 20 or does that look okay?
Graph of thing as a function of time from when the wheel began to roll. No, I think this is a cosine graph.
It is.
A sine graph, because a sine graph is like, wait, let me draw it. A sine graph is like, it's like that. That's like my best.
Yeah, a sine graph would be like this. Sine starts at its 0 point and it goes like this, right?
Yeah, starting from the middle and the highest point, then I think the one that makes.
Okay, so let's just go through each of these. Let me see what the speed at which the wheel is rolling. So I think that'd be constant. So that's not correct. The distance the wheel is from the starting point. Okay, so like I think that's going to be a graph like this. Okay, you can imagine because the center of the wheel is just going to move along like this, right? So that's incorrect. The distance of the mark of the rim from the center of the wheel. Well, that is actually going to be a linear function just like this, because the radius from the center stays constant, right? So this is another constant. So then how about D? The distance of the mark of the rim from the ground. Now, I think that's good, because if it takes a half turn, it's down on the ground. Takes another half turn, it's back up at the top. And when it's first tumbling over, think about this. When it's first tumbling over, it's going down slow, but then faster, faster. And when it's first coming back up, it comes back up slow, but then faster, faster as it overturns. So I think that is the correct answer. Now that one's a little tricky, but you got to make sure you talk yourself through exactly what they mean. Okay? Remember, everybody in the United States and sometimes in other countries even takes this exam. So there have to be some questions on this exam that are hard. That like people who are going to Harvard, Yale, and Princeton and stuff just find easy. You know. So I'm not trying to be derogatory to anybody when I say that. What I'm trying to say is you're always going to run into difficult questions on these exams, okay? So you've got to really think carefully about some of what they're asking.
That they had to draw the pixel drawn, but I thought they meant like literally like from the ground. Like if the center point was like from like towards the bottom of the wheel, and I was like that.
Yeah, so if you follow the wheel as it moves along, so like if you keep the camera on the wheel, it will be a cosine graph. Okay.
C has to be greater than 1. I plugged in 3 for C, and then because I was just gonna do 2, but then sometimes there's like problems where you plug in 2 and it like sometimes it either works or it doesn't work. But since like 2 is not a weird number, but since it's like unreliable, I just didn't choose 2. But I chose 3, and then for A I chose 4, and then for B I chose 5, and what did I get out? I got out a negative number. That's why I didn't think A would work. I got negative 1, 4.
But I wouldn't choose 5 for A. I would choose negative 5. It says A is negative.
Negative 5 if B is supposed to be positive.
No, I choose negative 5 for A, in accordance with what you were saying, and then just leave the rest the same.
But like I just rewrote it, so I A plus B in the 4. So like the negative sign was already in front of the A. So when I plug it in, it was just straight up B, just negative 4. Like.
Yeah. Okay. But I think you're getting along the right lines for the most part. But here's how I would reason it: if A is negative and B is a positive number, a negative minus a positive is what kind of number in the numerator?
If you have a negative number plus a positive number.
It's a negative minus a positive because it's A, which is negative, minus B. B's a positive number. I don't think so. So the thing is, remember, subtraction is not commutative. You can't switch the order without things going wrong. And then furthermore, just keep in mind, when you're plugging in A and A is a negative, that just means that's a negative number. But then if you do minus B, as long as B is positive, minus B is the same thing as plus a negative number. So it's like a negative number plus a negative number. Has to be a... what kind of number? Correct, yeah. It's like if you've dug a hole and you dig some more, you are definitely below the ground, right? A negative plus a negative is a negative.
What I'm saying over negative A, you cannot do that. Because it said, like the question says, if A is negative and B is positive, like I can't do that because it's saying that B is positive, so I just flip the signs.
Yeah, I would not flip the signs. Like, here's the deal. So here's the deal. When you flip signs, only you should flip signs if you retain the same ultimate sign of each term. So what I'm trying to say is, since A is negative, you could do subtract whatever number you put in for A. So if you put in 5 for A, you really should put in negative 5, or you should put in subtract 5. But both are the same. Mm-hmm. But hang on, this is where you keep getting tripped up. It shouldn't be plus B, because B is a positive. It's minus B, minus a positive number. Think about this. Like, if you're digging a hole, minus a positive means the hole gets deeper because positive dirt comes out of the hole. That's another way to think about it. You're subtracting off a positive, right? When you subtract a positive, that's the same thing as adding a negative. You go further down into the hole, correct?
Oh, right. I can manipulate the signs because that's still technically what the question was asking, but I see.
So anyway, all I'm saying is the numerator becomes negative when you add two negatives, and you divide by A we already know is a negative. So a negative divided by a negative is what sort of a number? Positive. That's right, it has to be positive. The way to do it is A minus B over A. Now here's the deal, no matter what the value of A is, we know that this ends up being a positive, right? So that this whole thing ends up being a positive. That's the first thing we know, because A is negative, B is positive. But now let's see if we can determine if it's greater than 1 or it's equal to 1. Now, what this is, it's going to be A over A minus B over A. Now, A over A, no matter what A is, that's what sort of a number? Yeah, and in fact, a positive 1. Because no matter what A is, if you divide it by itself, it has to be 1. Then you do minus B over A. Now, if you think about it, A is a negative number, and B is positive, correct? So this right here is positive, this right here is a negative. So does it make sense to you that 1 minus B over A has to be greater than 1? Because if A is a negative, even if A is a lot larger number in absolute value than B, you'd still be like, say, adding 1/16, or you might be adding 1/9. But they're going to be positive numbers, so it's still going to be larger than 1. So that's why choice A, which is what I was thinking about, but just for the wrong reason, is still correct. So it's not going to equal 1, it's going to be greater than 1.
26 students were surveyed and they reported at least 2 siblings. Class size in the state is 26. If the students in Mr. 8th grade class in 1,000, so which of the following best estimates the number of 8th grade students who have fewer than 2 siblings? Okay, for just straight up, I was going to subtract 100 from 34.6. 34.6 was saying you have at least 2 siblings. So since it's asking who have fewer than 2 siblings, you got 34.6. So
right. So if you have at least 2 siblings, that means you have 2 or more, right? Because you have at least 2. Yeah. So, right. So 34.6%. at least 2 siblings. So it says we want to know the number who have fewer than 2 siblings. So first of all, like you said, the complement, so sometimes called the complement. So the complement percent is going to be 100% minus 34.6%.
Actually, yeah. So the next thing I was gonna do, I was gonna find out how basically the remainder percentage of that 26 by like the other percentage, and then after that, I was gonna take how many of that 26, and then I was gonna set up a proportion so I could find out how many of like the rest, like the 1,800 other, or not other, but total would have.
I mean, here's the deal. Also, once you get this percentage of the complement, you can probably just multiply it by the total number of students in the state. Because let's just take the 26. Oh, no, sorry. There's 26 people in a class, and there's 1,800 classes in the state. So what we need the number of students in the state is 26 times 1,800, first of all, right? So 26 times 1,800, so that's 46,800, but then we need 65.4% of that. So I'm just going to multiply by 0.654. So hopefully I've got 30,607. So that's closest to C. Fewer than 2 siblings.
An experimental study, the time of pictures arranged in order. Each person was asked to choose the most appealing picture out of 150. 36 chose the first picture in the set. The remaining 150 people chose the first picture in the set. P people chose the first picture in the set. If more than 20% of all participants chose the first picture in the set, which of the following inequalities best describes the possible values of P? The first 150, 36 remaining people, P people, chose the first picture. If more than 20% of all participants chose the first picture in the set, I don't think P would, you wouldn't want to add or subtract the 36 to it, because P is its own separate amount of people, right?
Yes, but think about this, right? 20% of 300 is the 0.20 times 300, right? So I'm thinking it's either choice C or D. Do you see how I'm narrowing it down to that? Because 20% of 300, now by the way, 20% of 300, that's 60 people, right? So the thing is, we have to have a number that's greater than 60 people. Mm-hmm. Now, to get the total number of people that chose the first picture, do we subtract 36 from the P, or do we add 36 to the P?
Is it just asking about,
Well, it still has to do with the 36, because it turns out if P is 0, if nobody chose, then we don't have 60 people. Now, if P is 24, we're just below the right number of people. But if P is 25 gives 61. So that's just above 60 people. So which situation would that be? Is it P minus 36 or P plus 36? That's right, because you add the two groups to get the total number of people that are above 20% of the whole group. Yep. Okay. So it could be choice D. Any question on that? So the surface area of a cube is 6 times a squared over 4, where a is a positive constant. Where do you think the 6 comes from when we're doing the surface area of a cube? Yeah.
Actually, I don't know where you're getting the squared from, but I don't think...
Well, so let's just focus on, say, this right side face, okay? So we're saying the area here should be a over 4 squared, right? Yeah, well, because it makes it an area, right? So let me ask you this. What is this length right here? So if it's a over 4 squared, what do we know about the side lengths everywhere in a square?
Oh, they're all the same.
Yeah, they have to be all the same. So since they're all the same, I mean, we could just take the square root of this to get one side. So you could say this side, or this side, is equal to the square root of a over 4 squared, which is what? A over 4, right? Then we want the perimeter of one face. So the perimeter of a square is going to be, how many sides are there to a square?
Like top and bottom?
So I think just one of the squares, because just one face of the cube. Right, but what they're saying is when they say one face of a cube, so right here, one face of a cube, I think they're referring to, say, what's the perimeter just around this one, let's say. It'd be what? Yeah, right, there's 4 sides, but there's 4 sides times, what's the length on each side? What do you just compute the length of each side is in terms of A? A over 4. So what's 4 times A over 4? That's right, okay? Okay, that's a little tricky about how you have to kind of work through it. Okay, yeah, you're on the right track. I mean, again, it's kind of like I said several minutes ago. I mean, I think you've got most all the right ideas, but let me help you a little bit with the terminology and how to solidify getting it right. So the idea is that you're referring to what's calling completing the what? Yeah, completing the square. Okay, now remember, when we complete the square, we have to have half the middle coefficient squared added, right? Yeah, that's right.
Added, you get 20. And then for the y squared plus 16y, that would be 8, because 4 times 4 is 16, and then 4 plus 4 is 8. And then you would...
Well, we're not going to have 8 here. I think we're going to have half of this is 8. So 16 over 2 is 8. But then what's 8 squared? Not 16.
Or 64, sorry.
64. Okay. So I think that's 64. So we need negative 20 plus 100 plus 64 on the right-hand side, correct?
Yes.
Now, by the way, the right-hand side doesn't matter so much. We might as well just leave it, because what really matters is actually factoring on the left-hand side. So what should this factor to? Exactly. X plus 10 squared. What does this factor to? I'd say y plus 8 squared. But yes, I agree. Uh-huh. So what's the center going to be?
Negative 8.
Good. All right, good job.
This one just be A, because it's a difference of perfect squares. Unless, oh yeah, because it said it's a positive constant, so it would just be like x squared minus 4, and then it would just be x squared plus 2, x squared minus 2.
So you said it's A?
So I was saying that's like a difference of perfect squares. So like, so you don't have like the B term, because like it got canceled out when you were...
So let's put it this way. A is almost the right answer, but I don't think A is quite the right answer. What you said out loud was right with the 4 versus 2, but I don't think that leads us to A for the correct answer. So because when you factor it as a difference of squares, then you also have to do what with the A there? So when we go from 4 to 2, we're taking the what root. So it'd be B. Okay? Now notice A is a positive constant. It doesn't necessarily have to be a perfect square. Or sorry, x squared minus 7. So it would still factor to x plus square root of 7 times x minus square root of 7. Now, like you said, if A was 4, it factored to x plus 2, x minus 2. But the reason B is still the correct answer is because whether or not A is a perfect square or not, when you square root it, it will still be given by the equation shown in B. Okay? Make sense?
So what we saw in these math problems is there's all kinds of methods, all kinds of ways to solve SAT math problems, but they were explained in such a way where you're able to follow along. So thank you for watching High Peak Education. Please smash that like button if you enjoyed this content. Please subscribe to the channel, and we'll be able to make more videos like this. Let us know what value you're getting out of them, and let us know in the comments what other kinds of videos you want to see and how else we can help you. Social media links are also down in the description below, and please support us on Patreon. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to talking to you in the next video.